Okay, you guys, so my kid is finally asleep, so and not sick. Um, dear heart, he had chickenpox, so he's over that. Um, so like I said, I wanted to actually stay invested in this channel. And I can finally talk about this a little bit more. It's so much, and I contemplated doing it in different parts. I contemplated doing a deep dive, which I might still do. It's not that it matters to me to debate this specific subject, but because it used to be something I debated a lot, and I feel like it's pretty solid. My points and stuff, especially for those who believe in the New Testament. You guys know from the title of the video, we are talking about time, we're talking about calendars, we're talking about ancient civilizations and cultures who defined religions that people still follow and how they reckon time. And so I was actually reading this, and um, it got me thinking about time and how we count time, and is time really even a thing? Which then led me to an article that talked about, it's like new studies basically saying is time what we thought? And the answer is obviously no. But then what is time? And basically time is something that is actually independent, not dependent, when we talk about quantum physics. And I don't want to get way too nerdy on you guys. Um, but I do think it's important because obviously, with it being the Gregorian civil calendar's new year, people are pushing themselves into, new year, new me. They're setting goals, they're feeling motivated, or they're trying to make themselves motivated or whatever. And depending, to me, I'm not one of those people that's like, it's not a new year. Yes, it is. It's a new civil Gregorian year. It is a new year for all sorts of that is counted. If you follow a Gregorian calendar for your paycheck, and for them days off work, and for your kids to go to school, and for the bank, and for everything else, it is a new year for that, right? And then you have a new year for the fiscal year, depending on where you work in the banks. And then you have a new year for new school year. So I'm never going to be that person that's anti new year. However, I understand the people that are like, hey, if in the dead of winter, if you're not feeling like new year, new me, there's nothing wrong with you. And it's okay to just be like, no, it's winter. I'm actually resting, and I'm, cultivating or hibernating or whatever season you may be in. That's okay, because you might be more connected to an agricultural cycle in New Year. If you're more, I guess, connected to the earth, if you're more connected to the cosmos, you might feel like a new year depending on the planetary alignments, right? And all of these things matter. And I just wish people would stop thinking that they have absolute truth on absolutely everything. It is annoying. There's a lot of room for nuance and human design and whatever. Whether you believe that you're here by chance, which I think is crazy, or you believe that there is an ultimate source, one that we communicate as creator or God, or the supreme being, whatever you want to refer to that, him, her, they as. um we we were designed differently, all of us. And within that, there seems to be similarities across people. So if it's not new year, new you, there's nothing wrong with you. You're probably just going to feel that in the spring when the sun freaking comes back out and these days get a whole lot longer. And that's okay. Spring cleaning, I don't typically feel refreshed and new um in the spring or the winter. I find that I feel that way more so in the summer and fall. So, which is in alignment with the Jewish civil calendar, I suppose. Um, it makes sense. But anyway, I wanted to talk about calendars, and I'm not going to do a deep dive like I want to, but I will do it. I'm going to I think Emir Tashem, I'm going to do a video deep diving why I believe a biblical day starts in the evening, and from the beginning of the story that we get told, Genesis 1 verse 5, a day starts in the evening. At some point, the farmers counted days sunrise to sunrise, which makes sense. However, the cycle of the Moedim, the way that those days, the way you have to reckon that, and the way to keep those days in alignment is always going to be sunset to sunset, counting a day. And if you are a New Testament believer, there's just indisputable evidence to, in my opinion, again, that a day starts um, in the evening. So not necessarily sunset, but basically in the evening. And we're going to get into the difference. I think I'm going to do that deep dive, which goes into, and I think I'm going to do a series on it, because there's the difference of when a day starts. There's going to be the difference of when a month starts, a new month. Is it with the new moon? I say yes. And is a new moon a full moon? I say again. Um, Whatever. There's just different opinions, the sliver and a full moon, and all of these things. When does a new month start? Um, and then is the Shabbat. Basically, there are people who, in my opinion, have a day zero, and then their months start um, in a way that is weird to me. Um, and the way that they count their days makes it so that they could go 6 or 5 days and get a Shabbat, or whatever. So their Shabbats are based off of when their month starts, if that makes sense. So anyway, I don't want to get into that too much here, but that is erroneous. I think they base it off Enoch's calendar, but that is erroneous. The reason why has everything to do with Shavuot, and the fact that they absolutely will not keep that in time at the right time, nor most of the festivals, but at the right time if they're keeping a purely lunar calendar. So that will segue me into the discussion I want to have, which is just really that I don't know that we need to be so concerned with, are we doing everything exactly the way the Bible said, like keeping time exactly the way, because there's multiple ways that time is kept in the text, because this is a real people going through exile, and then there's a post-exilic time, and they absolutely borrowed things from the Babylonian cultures, which is, I think, been like the thing that I'm on, is getting people to get out of there like, no, 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 pagan, 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 everything's pagan, where it's like, if that's your belief, I need you to honestly sit the Bible down, because there are so many things that were taken, and we went through the whole Zoroastrian practices, and even things like ZZO, things that were taken from this Babylonian culture and cultures before then, and then brought into and made a part of the Judean culture and way of life and jurisprudence and legal system. That if you're like a pagan police in that way, then you got to put the Bible down. Calendar being one of them, especially the fact that um, you're just not going to be able to keep all of the calendars presented in the Bible, all the ways of reckoning time. So I believe that even Hillel's calendar has its roots in a Zoroastrian calendar, but the Zoroastrian calendar, I believe, has its roots in an older Babylonian calendar, which scholars debate which one's older, but I believe that those two are competing for who has like the oldest way of reckoning time. And both of them, I believe, are lunar solar at some point. So I know that the Zoroastrian one was purely solar at one point, and it became lunar solar because it was like, oh, these festivals, again, when you have to keep festivals at a specific time, season, you're gonna have to reckon time as far as leap years and things like that. So calculations need to be done. Hillel's calendar, Hillel the second, I'm being more specific, which is the calendar that Jews use now, for the most part. That calendar did the same thing. Calculations needed to be done. It is lunar solar, but the biblical calendar is lunar solar. So the calendar becomes lunar solar way back in Bible times, like as the Bible's playing out. The Zoroastrian calendar, like I said, that had to be reckoned. And then the Babylonian calendar, I believe, has always been lunisolar. So we're going to look at a couple articles that I found. First, I want to just get into like the nerdy quantum physics things of like what is time, so like we kind of get what we're talking about. But the purpose of all of this is really just to get to a point where we understand that time is not concrete. Time is actually very abstract, and time is a part of the human experience, but it's also a part of the experience of the soul. And I think when we transcend this idea that time is linear, or that time is concrete, or that time is dependent on all of these other entanglements, we can understand the divinity in ourselves, our ability to, I don't want to say elevate, but our ability to elevate, our ability to experience, using more than just our five senses, like on a spiritual level, not time travel, but what I believe, these multiple dimensions, this multiverse, we can experience that on a very, very, very deep level. In science, it will catch up. But anyway, I feel like I'm getting nerdy and talking Chinese, which is, I shouldn't say that, speaking Mandarin, which I don't know a lick of. And I know most Americans don't either. So that's how I feel like I'm speaking. But I'm going to move on over to my computer here and share my screen and all of that. So if you guys will bear with me, I'll get all that up so you guys can see what I'm looking at, and we can go through some of this and hopefully get some of y'all's opinions. And if you guys want to debate when a day starts, in the comments, we could do that too, but that's not really what I'm here for. I'm just here talking about the ways in which we reckon time and use calendars, and how that absolutely can affect our spirituality when we choose to take on new endeavors, when we choose to, how we see signs on this earth, our awareness of the spiritual, of the esoteric, of the divine, being aware of cycles and seasons. The biblical calendar is very cyclical. Everything's a cycle, and life is a cycle. And we will see that until you pass certain tests, you will continue to go through the same things. And the biblical calendar is an excellent example of your future is your past. And if you don't pass the test that you're continually going to encounter, then you will not progress in what I believe is this spiral of, time, this lifespan. So anyway, I'm babbling. Let's get to the actual stuff that I'm looking at so you guys can know what I'm talking about. Hi, friends. Okay, I think we're up and started. Hopefully my microphone works. Okay, so I want to start off by reading something from this book here. Some of you guys have seen it. This is the Torah. Here's the side of it. It's a modern commentary. It's obviously the first 5 books of the Bible. That's who it's by. And so I don't know if this is more helpful for you guys, but here you go. This is what I'm reading from. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see it. So I found these wonderful notes in here, and I don't think I've ever showed you guys the inside of this because how would I? But that's what it looks like on the inside. That's what the inside looks like. Okay. So I was just reading, and I wasn't reading the Torah portion or anything like that, but I was reading and I was like, oh, this is good information. Not necessarily new information, but this is good information. And so I'm going to start off by reading that, and then we will get into some of the things online. I'll share my screen and show you guys what's going on. I just want to say that I love doing this. I absolutely love being on YouTube and nerding out and just, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Here's some information. Do you guys have any thoughts? I love it. If you guys subscribe to my channel and you guys support my channel, I appreciate it because I do get like a small little coin, here and there for it. Not often because I don't post that often, but it is something that helps me out when you guys do subscribe or like or comment or engage. And if nothing else, I think it's cool that when you guys comment and engage with the video or whatever, the little algorithm thing shoves it out to other people. And then I end up meeting all sorts of amazing people all around this globe and hearing their perspectives and being presented with different information and new information. And I just like to learn. I'm a nerd. I like to learn. I like to read. And I like when you guys bring things out to me that I hadn't considered before. So do all those things, press all those buttons, whatever. Okay, back to what I was reading. So I'm going to read the section. It's starting at like the Torah portion of Leviticus 23, but this is like Harvard's breakdown beforehand. So the festival calendar. I'll start with calendar reckoning. So it says, festivals have their place within some orderly reckoning of time periods. Even primitive peoples acquire some knowledge of practical astronomy. That's a good point because there are people who think that astronomy and astrology are both pagan, and they're not. Like, you had to have knowledge of that, and we have evidence that Abraham had amazing knowledge of this. Our tradition passed down from Noah, from Adam to Noah to Abraham, Seth, Abraham, etc. Okay, so festivals have their place within some orderly reckoning of the time periods. Even primitive peoples acquire some knowledge of practical astronomy. In ancient Egypt and still more in Mesopotamia, astronomical studies were relatively advanced, and the Hebrews doubtlessly learned and borrowed much from their neighbors. The day, Hebrew yom, like English day, designates both the daylight hours and also what we call the civil day, which includes nighttime. The division of the day into 24 equal hours was probably unknown in Bible times. The night was divided into 3 or 4 watches. In Mesopotamia, the day was divided into 12 double hours, varying in length according to the time of year. That should sound familiar to like New Testament people, especially. Okay, at what point did the civil day begin? There is some evidence that at one time the day was reckoned from sunrise to sunrise, but before the close of the biblical period, it had become standard to reckon the day from sunset to sunset, and this has been Jewish practice ever since. The Jewish day does not begin at a fixed hour, as according to our secular practice. The civil day starts at midnight, regardless of the season. In winter, the Jewish day starts and ends earlier. In summer, later. The week. Unlike other units of time we are considering, the week does not clearly correspond to an astronomical phenomenon, though each phase of the moon lasts about 7 days. The origin of the week has been the subject of much scholarly discussion, which has not led to many certain conclusions. So far as we know, a regular, uninterrupted cycle of 7-day units first appeared in Israel. My people who start their days just randomly with the... Okay, anyway, I don't want to go there. Don't go there. Okay. But When and why it was introduced remains an unsettled problem. The week is certainly connected with the sacredness of the number 7 and with the Shabbat. It came to the Western world through Judaism and Christianity, months and years. As an astronomical concept, the year is the length of time in which the Earth makes a circuit of the sun, a little over 365 days. Ancient peoples thought the sun moved around the Earth, but they could still measure the Earth in terms of changing seasons. Or they could still measure the year in terms of changing seasons. The series of equinoxes and solstices in a calendar based on this solar year, such as the Gregorian calendar, our calendar. The month is simply an arbitrary division corresponding to no astronomic reality. The true month, as the name related to moon indicates, is the length of time in which the moon makes a circuit around the earth, readily measured from the appearance of one new moon to the next. It is a fraction over 29 days. For practical purposes, therefore, lunar months are reckoned as alternately of 29 and 30 days. 12 such months add up to 354 days. A pure lunar system falls behind the sun about 11 days each year. Listen, 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 listen. If you are one of those, like, I'm following Enoch's calendar, it's purely lunar, you're still going to have to do some calculations somewhere because you're losing time. You're going to fall behind this. This is going to mess with your seasons. You're going to fall out of season and you won't be able to keep your Pesach, your Passover, in the spring. Your Pesach is going to end up being in the winter and it's going to end up being in the fall, which you just can't do that. It's about the barley. Anyway. Again, I can't get carried away here. But, okay. Where am I? In the Muslim calendar, which is such a system. So the Muslim calendar, the Islamic calendar is purely lunar. The month of Ramadan may occur at any season, which is fine for them, a problem for the Bible people. But the Israelite calendar, though it consists of lunar months, seems never to have had that character. The festivals were firmly anchored to the seasons of the agricultural year, with Passover in the spring and the Feast of Booths in the fall. The Feast of Booths being Sukkot in the fall. There was then presumably some provision for adjusting the lunar and solar years to each other. Centuries before the Christian era, the Babylonians had a lunisolar calendar. A watch was kept for the appearance of each new moon. When it was sighted, the king was notified, and he in turn sent orders to the temples for the proper rites to be performed. The king, moreover, would add an extra month to the year when his experts so advised to keep the lunar calendar in balance with the solar year. As scientific knowledge advanced, the Babylonian astronomers worked out a scheme for the alternation of both 29-day and 30-day months and for the assertion of an extra month 7 times in each cycle of 19 years. According to a recent study, this computed calendar was introduced at about 481 BCE, after several centuries of experimentation. Jewish procedure during the Second Commonwealth was much like the earlier Babylonian practice. Witnesses appeared before the high court in Jerusalem to testify that they had seen the crescent moon. Thereupon, the court formally announced that a month had begun, and so it notified communities throughout the land by signal fires, later by messengers. Until such notice was received, people did not know whether the 13th day or whether the 30th day was the last of the old month or the first of the new. Diaspora Jews who did not receive official notification began to keep each of the sacred occasions for 2 days, Yom Kippur excepted, to be sure of observing them on the proper date. I mean, people who like study the Bible and study the Torah, that should make sense to you. And then obviously people don't understand like why Jews have an extra day sometimes. It's for the diaspora. It comes from this time period. So, okay, so in the 4th century CE, the Palestinian authorities, headed by Hillel II, made a computed calendar system virtually identical with that which the Babylonians had adopted some 7 centuries earlier. It goes on, it goes on. It basically just talks about Hillel and how he calculated Hillel II and how that was calculated. The names of the months. 3 ways of designating the months are found in the Bible. Most frequently, as it is present in the chapter, they are indicated by number. In this system, the first month is the spring month in which Passover falls. So that would be Abib. At one time, however, the months had Hebrew or Canaanite names. At least 4 of them have survived. Most often mentioned is Abib, pronounced Aviv. The word means fresh grain and eventually acquired the general meaning spring. That's Exodus 13:4, Deuteronomy 16:1, and elsewhere. And we can just look at that real quick because I know people be like, why aren't you reading that section? Because I'm tired and my kid will wake up at any time and I'm trying to just get it through. Exodus 13:4, which I probably should have just went to Deuteronomy, but it's fine. Okay, so Exodus 13:4. I'm literally just reading from Holy Bible, RSV, Catholic Edition. Goodness, large print. Okay. Exodus 13, verse 4. It says, "This day you are to go forth in the month of Abib. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month." Okay. So that's that one. So the actual word is there, like Abib. And this, it's a Hebrew or Canaanite name. Okay. Then 3 other names in this series, Ziv, Bul, Ithanim, are mentioned in 1 Kings. Let's go to 1 Kings 6:37. Okay. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv. The other ones are right here in this passage too. So, and in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its parts, and according to all its specifications. He was 7 years in building it. So, you guys got to pay attention to this when we're saying no to certain things. So, in the book of Esther, and sometimes in other late biblical books, Zechariah, Ezra, and Nehemiah, the ancient Babylonian month names are employed. In post-biblical times, this usage became standard and has continued to the present. What are these names? Traditions assume that these changes of nomenclature were no more than that. Whether the spring month was called Abib, first month, or Nisan, which is the Babylonian one, the calendar system was the same. Some modern scholars, too, hold this view. But there are many reasons for thinking that changes occurred also in the calendar system and in the order and character of some of the holidays. To try and trace the history of how the calendar through the centuries would, however, be too complicated and hazardous an undertaking for us because it's a lot. And then it just goes. It goes on and on and on. talks about the new year. That's literally like pages and pages, and I don't want to sit here, and we're 16 minutes in. All I've done is read this, so I don't want to keep going, but it talks about the controversy of Shavuot. Yeah, you guys let me know if you guys want me to do a separate video just reading this. I might just do an audio and just read this excerpt, but yeah, you guys let me know if you guys want that, and I will literally do that. It's like, I don't know, 10 pages of that sort of thing. So anyway, that led me to looking at this article here, which I just find interesting. And then we're going to go back into, no, we're not. We're going to look at the calendar stuff now because that makes more sense. We'll do it this way. Present, share screen. We will share the Zoroastrian. Okay. Okay. Can you guys see me and see it? The article? Yes, you can. Okay. So this is heritageinstitute.com. This is where I found a lot of good information on the Fasli calendar, as well as the other calendars that Zoroastrians actually use currently. I'm pretty sure they use 3. So we'll just read this together and then scroll down and get to some stuff that I found interesting. And again, a lot of this is informational purposes. My whole goal here is just to be like, yo, like, there's a lot of different ways to count time. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way, depending on what your goals actually are. And as human beings, we absolutely are connected to the cosmos and the cycles of the moon, the stars, the sun, all of it. And that's what all of these ancient cultures were trying to get us to understand. And it's not witchcraft, it's not wizardry, it's not anything other than being a human being. We just need to educate ourselves. And it's also incredibly nerdy and fun to think about all the ways these people decided to count time. So, okay. So, the Zoroastrian Fastly calendar is one of the most precise and consistent calendars used in the world today. Oh, one 365-day calendar grid can be used perpetually. The calendar can also serve as a zodiac and seasonal calendar in temperate regions. The Zoroastrian calendar is based on a solar year of 365 days. It consists of 12 originally lunar-based but now standardized months of 30 days each, plus 5 intercalary days after the last month. These intercalary days are festival days in preparation for New Year's Day, the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, or March 21st in the Gregorian calendar. Leap year days, weeks, or years are added according to the system selected. Okay. In Persian, a year is called Sol, a month is called Ma, and a day is called Rus. In the Zoroastrian calendar, the months and days are named. In the Western Gregorian calendar, only the months are named. Okay. So there's the traditional calendar, the imperial one, and then I guess the ancient one. So the traditional one, the most recent of all 3 calendars, is perhaps the most orthodox as it conforms to the method of organization described in the 1,000-year-old Zoroastrian text and Bundahism and the Drinkard, a method followed before the Arab invasion of Iran. The Shanshai calendar was instituted by the Parsis of India after they fled the Arab invasion of Iran and arrived in India. It goes on to say a lot more, but we're not really going to focus on that. In the Khadimi calendar was the name given to the calendar used by the Zoroastrians in Iran after the Arab invasion of Iran and the consequent disruption in maintaining the calendar according to this and the Tinkard. Qadim is the Arabic word for old. So how old are we getting? Let's scroll down. So the last leap month adjustment made to the Khadimi calendar by the Zoroastrian still in Iran was around 1006 CE, which, I mean, that's pretty, that's, it's kind of old. Let's go back. So this gets into like the actual calculations. If you guys want to be super nerdy, you guys can get all into the calculations, but this I found interesting as far as Zarathustra. The date when Zarathustra proclaimed or started the religion has been lost to antiquity. Ancient Greek authors placed Zarathustra's life around 6000 BCE. Yikes. So a Persian, I don't want to read that too much, but some Zoroastrians have adopted Dabi's calculation and used March 21st, 1737 BCE as the first year of the Zoroastrian calendar, which again is old. Just keep scrolling down until I find what I was looking for. Kept apart. So these are all the quotes about how they're calculating, which I found really interesting, but this is not what I'm looking for. The seasons in the zodiac, very good stuff if you're into the zodiac. If you're not, skip it. Maybe that was what I was looking for up here. The lost year. Okay. Oh, yeah. Whoever keeps the year by the revolution of the moon mingles summer with winter and winter with summer. So our years are solar on the Hebrew calendar and the months are lunar. So it's lunar solar. Zoroastrian calendar was just totally solar, obviously, that keeps things in season the same way ours was. I really don't get people who follow the Bible and then want to keep a purely lunar calendar. I don't understand that. It's just crazy. This mentions Nimraz, which again is interesting. I can't find what I was looking for, and I just saw it in this article, which is gonna tick me off, but I should have just highlighted it. I think it was over here somewhere. Yes. Okay. In the 1720 CE, Valeti, an Iranian Zoroastrian priest, visited India, and during his discourses, he and his Parsi host discovered that there was a month's difference between their two calendars. This caused some consternation among a group of Parsi priests in Surat, Gujarat, and since Iran was considered the source of all orthodoxy, the assumption was that the calendar the Parsis were using was an error. These priests began to solicit community support for the adopting of the Iranian calendar, which some of the Parsis of the Zarah formally adopted on June 6, 1745. They called the Iranian calendar Qadmi, and a new denomination of Zoroastrians in India was born. So I remember doing the video on Zoroastrianism, and people were saying that certain Zoroastrians in India were different from the ones in Iran and all these communities. But if you look here, we can see that a lot of that had to do with how they chose to keep time and reckon time. And so time, the way you decide to keep time and reckon time can even divide communities, you know? So anyway, this is a really good article to read if you haven't. I would look into that if I were you. I also wanted to go, that's not going to let me do that, huh? We can remove, and then I will stop sharing screen. And then we'll share screen again. I don't know if I have to do it like this or not. So this is an article on Hillel's calendar. It is from netivia.org. And I found it interesting. Can y'all see that? Is it? Yes, it is. Okay. So this just opens up talking about the weekly parashat, which is the Torah portion. But okay, the scriptures command us to celebrate Passover in the spring at the time of the ripening of the barley. So the Jewish calendar has to be a solar calendar. But in another place, it also commands us to remember the new moon days. So the Jewish calendar has to be a lunar calendar. So if you guys don't understand, keeping the calendar by the sun, solar, keeps your seasons in place so that your Passover will always be in the spring. But when you're also commanded to keep the new moon days, and when your new moon days start, that's your new month, and then that's where, you know, you get what month you're in from in order to keep the feast days in the right month, in the right season. You have to use the moon. And so if you continue to go down that path to keep the days that you're supposed to do certain things as you count the number of days and keep your weekly Shabbat in line, you have to go sunset to sunset. Otherwise, it's impossible. It won't work. Okay. However, 12 lunar cycles are shorter than the solar year by about 11 days, as in the Muslim calendar, for an example. And the Gregorian solar calendar is not aligned with the new moons. Even though the lunar year and the solar year aren't synchronized, the Hebrew calendar builds on the cycles of the moon while occasionally adding an additional intercalary month to catch up to the appropriate season of the solar year. That way, if Passover is coming, but it's still winter, then an additional month called Adar 2 is inserted before Adar 1 and returns Aviv and Passover to the springtime. So you had to do a little extra just to make sure that this works, which is okay because that's what you're commanded to do. The Torah reading cycle is for an entire year, but of course, if a whole additional month is inserted into the year, then the 4 additional readings need to come from somewhere. So that just gets into the Torah portions. We're not going to read that. The lunisolar Hillel II calendar is actually a brilliant invention that filled a desperate need. Originally, the new moons were formally cited by multiple witnesses and officially declared throughout Israel. But after the Second Temple destruction and the subsequent dispersion, the diaspora, it was impractical to declare the new moon to every Jewish community in the world. And under Constantius, goodness, my English is bad. The second, it was actually outlawed. As a remedy, the Sanhedrin instituted the Hillel II calendar in 359 ADC.
In one sense, it preserved uniformity among Jewish people abroad, but in another way, it severed ties between Israel and the diaspora because they don't need to communicate as much anymore. The calendar itself, in general, is quite accurate, averaging 29.5 days per month and 365.2468 days per year, compared to the average solar year length of 365.2422. For adding and subtracting a day in consecutive years as needed, so as to avoid the waving the lulav on Shabbat or landing Yom Kippur adjacent to a Shabbat, which we don't want to do that. Implementing the Hillel second calendar was the Sanhedrin's last big decision before disbanding. Whenever the Hillel the second calendar will be decommissioned in the future to return to citing and declaring new moon days, it would have to be by the authority of a reconvened Sanhedrin, i.e., it's not gonna happen. So, for everyone wondering why Jews keep the calendar the way that they do, this is why. There's also this article here, which again, it's going to make me remove and present something else. I don't know how to do that. Stop screen. If there's like an easier way to navigate this, I sure would like to know. There's an article that you guys probably can't see it because it's so small, I'm sure, on the screen. But this here talks about evening or morning, when does the biblical day begin? J. Amanda McGuire. It's from Andrews University Seminary, and it is one of the most thorough write-ups I have ever seen. But it talks about when a day begins, and it helps you get a grip on why the moon and the sun matter from the point of Genesis 1. And I think that it's hard to have this discussion without talking about when a day begins per the Bible based on the moon and the sun and these lights and everything else. So I just brought this up to show you guys that if you're confused as to like this whole moon and sun and day and month and week and year, and you've just really never thought about it, they're all cycles. Every day is a cycle. And the scriptures talk about every morning, like there's new mercies, but I know that we all feel as human beings the cycles of the days, the cycles of the weeks, the cycles of the months, the cycles of the years. And that's how we are marking and counting time. But on a different level outside of just this 3D plane, this earthly plane that we're in, this realm, our souls are going through life cycles. So I believe that the way that we mark and count time, it's just a microcosm of the macro that's happening of our souls going through these lives, these lifetimes, if you will. And so before I sound too crazy, I am going to show you guys this one last article and then I'll get off here because, oh my God, it's like 40 minutes. No, it's 34 minutes plus whatever I recorded in the beginning. So you guys are probably super sick of me talking and my voice is starting to hurt. So I know it's time to shut up. But I wanted to also read this article because it was so good. And let's see if it comes up. Okay, it does. So this was published last summer, June 17th, 2024. It's popularmechanics.com, science section. Time may actually be one big illusion, says a new study. What if it's just a concept that exists in your mind? Ooh, doesn't that sound good? So if you're not like a quantum physics or anything type person, you may not be interested, but still stick around because I don't know, maybe you'll get interested. I wasn't interested in it until I went through, y'all read my book. Buy my book, read my book, and then you'll realize why and when I got interested in quantum physics and all of that. So okay, time has puzzled scientists for many decades. Does it meaningfully exist apart from our experience of it as everything moves toward the disintegration of entropy along its irrefutable arrow? You can't put the spilled milk of the weirdness of time back in the jug. In new research published by the American Physical Society's peer reviewed journal, Physical Review A, scientists from Italy try to translate one theory of time into real life, or at least closer to it. The theory is called Page and Wooter's mechanism, and Capo has studied it for years. It's a quantum mechanics idea that dates back to 1983. So if you're interested and you want to do your own research, that's the precipice of this. So I'll just read it. While general relativity in the classical physics model lets time be a variable, like the perception dependent difference between time on Earth and time in space in stories like Interstellar, quantum physics requires it to be nailed down. That means instead of a dependent variable, something defined by an external property like gravity or an object's distance from Earth, time must be independent, and there must be some way to measure it as such. This may seem counterintuitive. After all, quantum mechanics is considered the newer version of things, the one that destabilizes the foundation of physics in order to be reconciled with the classical model. But time has a unique role in quantum systems. After all, everything in a particular time, defined in some objective way, is knitted together through quantum interactions until it forms a capture of the entire universe, if you zoom out enough. In their paper, Capo and his co authors turn the page and Wooter's approach into a real concept for a clock. With quantum physics, a clock isn't much like the one you wear on your wrist or hang in your office. It's anything that has a predictable and uniform behavior that can be used as a measurement. Okay. Okay. New Scientist explains that Page and Wooters wondered if our world is so quantumly entangled within itself that any visible passing of time is a symptom of entanglement. They also suggested that we ourselves are implicated in that entanglement just by seeing the passage of time, because someone outside of the entangled system would see it standing still. My mind was like, wait, yes, that could be a thing. Okay, the clock, therefore, is the item within the entangled system that shows time passing. It's easy to see why this theory has stayed mostly abstract for over 40 years. Okay. Okay. That's a big deal. If our entire very macroscopic world fits into this definition of time based on entanglement, it means everything around us is entangled. Things would need to be entangled almost by definition in order to be part of our observable world. And it would mean that anything we see where time passes, no matter how far it is, no matter how far away it is linked with us in a vital way. All things are interconnected. Like, I'm getting nerdy, guys. I don't want to get too nerdy because I need to wrap this up. But I think that was the end of the article. But if y'all just think about that and you think about time and how we're marking time and how I think I've consistently said on this channel that in the Hebrew, in the Western world, we tend to think time as like linear. past, present, future, and it just is going to do like that. But in the Hebraic sense, the biblical sense, even if you look at the Nordic pagan calendar, you look at the Babylonian calendar, you look at ancient calendars, there's time is represented as a circle. It's cyclical. It's a cycle, and there's not really a need to feel like it's linear, like it's again being, I don't know how to say it, but there's not a need for time to feel so dependent, right? Time can be very independent, and that is this so as above, as below. That's this heaven and earth meeting, the divine with the mortal. And even this idea of the underworld, all of these things, all of the cosmos, the forces, the realms, all being linked, entangled. And time is just put in that. Like it's there in it. We're not time, but the clock. We notice it because we need to, or we feel we need to. But really, we can mark time just as our existence and our experience, as all things are intertangled anyway. Intertangled, goodness, entangled anyway. So I don't know. I hope this makes some sort of sense to you guys. If not, that's why I mostly shut the hell up and just stay in my thoughts. Um, I think that for people who make a practice of meditation and transcending their own thoughts and circumstances and just what's going on this earth, some of this will make a lot of sense, and maybe, help you as you continue on in your own musings on this journey. But that for me, as I'm exploring time and marking of time and counting time and what is time and why does time matter and why is it good to be aware of time to some extent, it just had me thinking. And of course, for me, it comes from a Jewish foundation, biblical model, the Torah, Yah, Hashem, God, the source of why time matters and why we had to start to talk about time and figure it out. So anyway, comment below. Let me know how you guys feel. It's 10:13, so I'm going to get off here and try to have this edited. I do start basketball tomorrow, so we'll see how much work I actually get done tonight. But I do want to try to get this out so that you guys have all day tomorrow, which will be Sunday, January 5th, I think, to digest and talk about it. So anyway, until next time, Emir to Hashem. Bye, everyone.